In southwest Florida, a 13-foot, 52-pound Burmese python fitted with a tracking device vanished without a trace. For weeks, the predator had moved through the Everglades, but then its signal suddenly went dead near a quiet residential neighborhood. Mere yards from where the signal died, a mother lived in a state of constant fear, her 2-year-old daughter playing at the edge of a wilderness that now held a terrifying secret. Then, one afternoon, her worst nightmare seemed to come true. She raced into the backyard, heart pounding, bracing for the unthinkable. But what she found wasn't a tragedy. It was something far more shocking. Before we start, hit the like button and make sure to subscribe if you haven't, and hit that notification bell so that you won't miss any new stories. The humid air of May in southwest Florida was a thick, living thing. It clung to the skin, carried the scent of wet earth and blossoming magnolias, and muffled the world in a blanket of perpetual dampness. For Dr. Ian McLeod, a biologist with the Conservancy of Southwest Florida, it was the smell of the front lines. He stood at the edge of a cypress swamp near Naples, the water a dark, still mirror reflecting the stoic gray trunks and the vibrant green of the canopy. His focus, however, was on the creature coiled inside a reinforced transport container, a Burmese python, 13 feet of muscle and predatory instinct. This wasn't just any python. This was Lukey. "All right, everyone clear?" Ian called out, his voice calm but carrying the weight of authority. His team, a small group of dedicated technicians and volunteers, gave him a thumbs up. Lukey was what they called a scout snake. The theory was elegant, if a bit grimly ironic. To combat the invasive python population that was systematically devouring the Everglades' native fauna, you had to think like a python. During breeding season, a male python's instincts would lead him directly to receptive females. By capturing a large male, surgically implanting a radio tracker, and releasing him back into the wild, Ian's team could turn the enemy's own biology against it. Lukey would become their unwitting informant, a Judas snake, leading them to the breeding aggregations where they could remove multiple pythons, especially the egg-laden females, from the ecosystem. The procedure had been flawless. Lukey, a formidable 52-pound specimen, was now fitted with a state-of-the-art transmitter. As they carefully guided the massive snake out of the container and onto the damp earth, it paused, its forked tongue tasting the air, a living sensor array processing a world of scent. Then, with a fluid, silent power that was both beautiful and terrifying, it slid into the undergrowth and vanished. "He's on the move," a technician reported, watching the blip on her screen. "Good," Ian murmured, wiping a bead of sweat from his brow. "Let's hope he's a social one." For the next few weeks, Lukey was a model scout. His signal pulsed reliably, a slow, steady heartbeat on their map. He moved through territories they expected, his path a winding thread stitching through the dense wilderness west of the Everglades. The team watched, they waited, and they prepared for the moment he would lead them to a prize. Then, one Tuesday morning in late May, the heartbeat stopped. The signal from Lukey's transmitter, which had been consistently pinging from a patch of preserve bordering a new residential development, went silent. Not weak, not intermittent. It was simply gone. "Could be a transmitter malfunction," one of Ian's colleagues suggested. "At 52 pounds, not much out there is going to cause a catastrophic malfunction," Ian countered, a knot of unease tightening in his stomach. The implications were chilling. A python of that size didn't just disappear. If it had been killed by an alligator, the tracker would likely still transmit from inside the gator, its signal moving with the larger predator. This utter silence suggested something else. something that had destroyed the transmitter itself. The last transmission placed Lukey alarmingly close to the backyards of the Oak Creek Estates, a quiet community carved out of the Pinelands. An official warning was quietly issued to the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, and a general advisory was posted for residents. "Be aware of your surroundings," it read. "Keep pets indoors. Supervise small children." For Sarah Connolly, that advisory felt less like a suggestion and more like a personal threat. Sarah had moved to the house in Oak Creek with her husband Michael 2 years ago. It was his dream home, backing right up to the untamed beauty of the preserve. He had loved the view from their lanai, the chorus of frogs at night, the occasional glimpse of a deer at the tree line. "It's the real Florida, Sarah," he'd say, his arm around her. "Wild and beautiful." 6 months ago, a sudden heart attack had stolen Michael from her, leaving Sarah alone to navigate his dream with their 2-year-old daughter, Lily. The wild beauty he had cherished now felt menacing. The rustle in the bushes wasn't a rabbit, it was a potential threat. The deep shadows under the cypress trees held secrets she didn't want to uncover. Lily, a bundle of sunshine with her father's bright blue eyes and a fearless curiosity, was the center of Sarah's world, and her greatest source of anxiety. At 2, the world was a playground, and the line between the manicured lawn and the wild preserve was one she didn't understand. After reading the advisory, Sarah felt a cold dread settle over her. She started doing obsessive patrols of her yard, her eyes scanning the dense wall of palmettos and vines that separated her property from the wilderness. She saw things she'd never noticed before. A patch of grass near the fence that looked oddly flattened, the way the birds would sometimes erupt from a patch of bushes in a panicked flurry. She called the number on the advisory. The voice on the other end at the Fish and Wildlife Service was professional but distant. "Yes, ma'am. We're aware of the situation. A large, tagged python is unaccounted for in your area. The best advice is to maintain a safe distance. Keep a very close eye on your child when outdoors. If you see anything, do not approach it. Call us immediately." "Keep a close eye on her?" Sarah had wanted to scream. "She's 2. She can disappear in the time it takes to blink." The fear became a constant, unwelcome companion. It sat with her as she ate breakfast. It followed her as she pushed Lily on the swing set, and it lay beside her in the 2 empty bed at night. The wild beauty Michael had loved now felt like a predator, waiting patiently just beyond the fence line. A few days later, the Florida heat and humidity conspired to create a particularly oppressive afternoon. The air was thick and still, promising a thunderstorm that refused to break. Lily was napping, and Sarah, desperate for a moment of normalcy, decided to tackle the mountain of laundry that had accumulated. She loaded the washer in the garage, the rhythmic sloshing of the machine a small comfort in the suffocating silence of the house. She was folding a tiny pair of Lily's overalls when she realized the baby monitor on the counter was silent. Too silent. The soft, rhythmic breathing she was used to hearing was gone. A prickle of unease turned into a jolt of pure adrenaline. She raced to Lily's room. The crib was empty. The back door, which she was certain she had locked, was slightly ajar. "Lily?" she called, her voice tight with rising panic. No answer. "Lily!" she screamed, her heart hammering against her ribs like a trapped bird. She burst out the back door and onto the lanai, her eyes scanning the yard in a desperate sweep. The swing set was empty. The sandbox was undisturbed. Her gaze flew to the fence, to the dark, tangled edge of the preserve. Oh God, no. And then she saw her. Lily was standing not 20 feet from the fence, perfectly still. She was dressed in her little pink sunsuit, her back to Sarah. She wasn't crying or moving. She was just looking. Her small arm was raised, her finger pointing at something in the grass just ahead of her. A wave of relief so powerful it made Sarah's knees weak washed over her. She took a step forward, a scolding word on her lips, but it died in her throat. Her eyes followed the line of Lily's pointing finger. There, no more than 10 feet from her daughter, lay the source of her deepest fears. It was a snake, coiled in the grass. But it wasn't just a snake. It was a monster. Its body was as thick as Sarah's thigh, its patterned skin of brown and tan a camouflage that had rendered it nearly invisible. It was massive, a river of muscle that seemed to go on forever. Sarah's breath caught. Her mind, paralyzed by terror, could only process one thought. It's not moving. She scooped Lily into her arms, her body trembling uncontrollably. Lily, safe against her mother's chest, just looked back at the snake and said, "Shh, snake sweepy." Sarah backed away slowly, her eyes locked on the python. It remained utterly, unnaturally still. Once inside, with the door securely bolted, she sank to the floor, holding her daughter so tightly Lily began to squirm. She couldn't stop shaking. She had come within seconds, within a few feet, of living her worst nightmare. The image of Lily standing so close to that beast was burned into her memory. After her trembling subsided enough to use her phone, she called the Fish and Wildlife Service. This time, there was no calm professionalism in her voice. It was the raw, ragged cry of a terrified mother. Within the hour, 2 trucks pulled up to her house. Ian McLeod was in the first one. He had been coordinating the search from a mobile command post a few miles away, and Sarah's address was right in the center of their highest priority zone. He listened to her frantic story, his expression grim. "Show me where," he said gently. Sarah, holding Lily tightly, pointed through the glass of the back door. Ian and his partner moved into the backyard with a cautious, practiced skill, carrying long poles with hooks on the end. They approached the snake from opposite sides, expecting it to be dormant, perhaps digesting a meal. Ian got close enough to see the distinctive pattern and the sheer girth of the animal. "That's him," he said quietly to his partner. "That's Lukey." He nudged the snake's tail with the pole. Nothing. He nudged it again, harder. The massive coil didn't even twitch. It was then that Ian noticed something was wrong. The position was unnatural. Part of the snake's midsection was covered with hastily scraped dirt and leaves, as if something had tried to bury it. And the head... "Hold on," Ian said, circling around. He knelt, his eyes widening in disbelief. The python's head was gone. Not just bitten, but completely severed from the body, the wound shockingly clean. "What in the world?" his partner whispered, staring at the grisly scene. This was not an alligator kill. An alligator would have left a mangled, twisted carcass, likely near water. A panther, a rare and powerful predator, might take on a snake, but the scene wouldn't look like this. The partial burial, the decapitation, it was methodical. It was bizarre. Ian scanned the ground. The grass was trampled, but the soft, sandy soil told a story. He saw tracks, but they weren't what he expected. They were small, padded, and unmistakably feline. But they were too small for a panther. "Get David on the phone," Ian said, his mind racing. "Tell him we've got something he needs to see." David Boone was a man who seemed to be carved from the same ancient wood as the Florida pines he loved. He was in his late 60s, with a face weathered by sun and time, and eyes that saw more in the woods than most people saw in a lifetime. He was a wildcat expert, but his knowledge was older and deeper than academic titles. He was a tracker, a naturalist, a man who spoke the language of the wilderness. He'd spent his life documenting the state's most elusive predators, particularly the Florida panther and the bobcat. He arrived an hour later, his old pickup truck crunching on the gravel of Sarah's driveway. He didn't say much, just nodded at Ian and walked into the backyard. He knelt by the dead python for a long time, his fingers gently probing the soil around the carcass, his eyes scanning every blade of grass, every disturbed leaf. "Alligator didn't do this," he said, his voice a low rumble. "Gator's a thrasher. This is a cutter." "A panther?" Ian prompted. David shook his head slowly. "Panther kill would be messier, more powerful. They'd break the spine, crush the skull. This is different. Precise." He pointed to the tracks Ian had seen. "And these aren't panther tracks. Too small, strides too short." "They look like bobcat tracks," Ian said, voicing the thought that seemed too incredible to be true. David looked up at him, a flicker of something. Intrigue, maybe even amusement in his eyes. "They are." "David, a bobcat can't do this," Ian protested, gesturing to the 13-foot, 52-pound snake. "The average bobcat weighs what? 20, maybe 25 pounds? There's no way." "Nature doesn't much care for our calculations, Ian," David said softly. "An animal fighting for its territory or for its life can do incredible things." He stood up, brushing the dirt from his jeans. "There's one way to know for sure. I'm going to set up a camera. Whatever killed this snake cached it. It buried it to hide it from scavengers. That means it intends to come back and feed." As the sun began to dip below the horizon, painting the sky in fiery strokes of orange and purple, David mounted a small camouflage trail camera to a pine tree, aiming it directly at the python's body. They would leave the carcass where it lay. The hunter would become the hunted, captured on film. Sarah watched from her window as the men worked. The initial terror had subsided, replaced by a profound and surreal mystery unfolding in her own backyard. She put Lily to bed, reading her a story about brave little animals in the woods, the irony not lost on her. That night, she didn't dream of the snake. She dreamt of a pair of fierce yellow eyes watching from the shadows. The next morning, David and Ian returned. The air was cool and clear after the previous day's oppressive heat. "Anything?" Ian asked as David carefully retrieved the memory card from the camera. "Let's see what the night had to tell us," David said, plugging the card into a small field laptop. They huddled around the screen. The first few hours of footage were still frames of the dead python, illuminated by the camera's infrared light. A raccoon ambled by, sniffed the air, and scurried away nervously. An opossum did the same. Then, at 2:17 a.m., a shape emerged from the darkness at the edge of the frame. It moved with a silent, confident grace. It was low to the ground, its body a taut bundle of muscle. It was a bobcat. It wasn't the largest David had ever seen, but it was a prime adult, its tufted ears erect, its short tail twitching. The cat cautiously approached the massive snake, its gaze intense. "There's our culprit," Ian whispered, stunned. The bobcat sniffed the carcass, then grabbed a fold of the snake's thick skin in its jaws and tugged. The 52-pound snake barely moved. The bobcat braced its feet, dug its claws into the earth, and pulled again, its entire body straining with the effort. It was a display of sheer, tenacious power that defied its size. For nearly an hour, the camera captured the bobcat feeding on its monumental kill. "I can't believe it," Ian said, shaking his head. "A 25-pound cat taking down a 52-pound snake. The physics of it. The snake could have crushed it, constricted it in seconds." "It didn't get the chance," David said, his eyes gleaming with respect. "Look there." He pointed to the area around the snake's severed neck. "See the puncture marks on the back? Deep ones. The cat must have stalked it, waited for the perfect moment, and launched from behind. It got its claws in, anchored itself, and went straight for the head with its teeth. It was an ambush. A perfect, incredibly brave ambush." The footage continued. After feeding, the bobcat spent another 10 minutes scraping more dirt and leaves over the snake, diligently trying to rebury its prize. Then it melted back into the darkness of the preserve. Ian was speechless. This was more than just a data point. It was unprecedented. It was the first time a bobcat had ever been documented successfully killing and caching a python of this size. It was a game changer. He turned to David, ready to discuss the scientific implications, but David held up a hand. "Wait, there's more." A few hours later, just before dawn, the camera triggered again. The bobcat had returned, but this time it wasn't alone. It stopped at the edge of the clearing, looked back, and made a soft, chirping sound. From the undergrowth, 2 tiny spotted kittens emerged, their movements clumsy and unsure. They stayed close to their mother, their oversized blue eyes blinking in the infrared light. The mother cat nudged them gently with her nose, keeping them a safe distance from the kill site, before leading them away along a different path, deeper into the safety of the preserve. A profound silence settled over the 2 men. The scene they had just witnessed transformed the event from a simple act of predation into something far more poignant. This wasn't just a predator. This was a mother. A mother who had faced down a monster more than twice her size, not just for a meal, but to protect her territory, to eliminate a threat to her young. Sarah, watching from her door, saw the looks on their faces. Ian walked over to her, his expression a mixture of awe and relief. He explained everything they had seen on the camera. The lone hunter, the impossible kill, the evidence of a mother protecting her den. As Sarah listened, the fear that had held her captive for months finally began to recede. The image of the monstrous snake was replaced by a new one. A wildcat mother, fierce and brave, standing guard in the dark. The preserve behind her house, which had become a symbol of her deepest anxieties, suddenly looked different. It was no longer just a place of hidden dangers, but a place of incredible strength, of resilience, of a mother's unyielding love. She had been terrified for her child, while just yards away, another mother had been fighting the very same battle for the very same reason. A 25-pound cat taking down a 52-pound snake, Ian said, echoing his earlier disbelief, but with a new tone of reverence. That's a win for the home team, a big one. He explained that this was a sign, a small but powerful indication that the native ecosystem, after decades of being battered by invasive species, was starting to fight back. Nature is adapting, he finished. the word feeling inadequate for what they had witnessed. That evening, Sarah sat on her lanai with Lily, who was busy arranging pebbles on the patio. The sun was setting, casting a warm, golden glow over the yard. The oppressive humidity was gone, replaced by a gentle, fragrant breeze. For the first time since Michael's death, a sense of peace settled over her. She felt his presence not in the sorrow of his absence, but in the enduring beauty of the wild place he had loved so much. He had seen its strength all along. Her eyes drifted to the tree line where the bobcat had disappeared. She thought of that small, fierce protector and her two kittens, safe in their den. In the vast, complicated tapestry of the wild, a thread of understanding now connected her to that world. A shared instinct, a common purpose that transcended species. To protect one's young, to defend one's home. As twilight deepened, she thought she saw a flicker of movement in the shadows, a pair of eyes that seemed to glow for a moment before vanishing. She wasn't afraid. She pulled Lily onto her lap, hugged her close, and whispered, "Your daddy was right, sweetie. It really is wild and beautiful." And in the heart of the preserve, a native mother was teaching her young the ancient rules of survival, unknowingly giving a human mother the gift of hope, and proving that even in the face of a monstrous invasion, the fierce, resilient spirit of home would always, always fight back.